this is big. This is really big.
Hello and welcome to this edition of FOF Live presented by La Pop. That is LAPOP. And as always, you can check them out on Instagram, Twitter, and at their Doral location. Everyone, this is a big series preview as we are looking at this 4-game set between the Miami Marlins and the division leading NL Central Milwaukee Brewers. We'll get to everything there with the Brewers. The Marlins did take 2 out of 3 games from the Phillies, and we also will talk about the man, the myth, the legend behind me, Mr. Sixto Sanchez, and it seems like first competitive game since Kevin was in middle school. So we'll it's been a long time, but we'll get to that way down the road. But first, let's look at this 3-game set versus the Phillies. Started off with a bang. With the Marlins came out to that game 3 where it seemed like the Marlins were going to get no hit by Ranger Suarez, and then DLC came up big time later in the game. But Eli, what did this game do for the Marlins' chances in the playoffs, and maybe even specifically to jump ahead against the Phillies?
Well, really quickly, I wanted to try this new format out where I could bring up people's comments and it doesn't block your head off. Because we used to have that before, right? Where you were all the way on the left side, and when you brought up people's comments, it would slice your head off right there. So we've adjusted that and made it better. And as LMF brings up in the comments,
never mind.
I see.
Never mind.
It's a 2-row comment, then it cuts you off. Anniversary of 9/11. Always thinking about that, especially myself as a New Yorker here. And it's good on the Marlins and all other major league teams for recognizing that. So, but back to baseball for this past weekend. Yeah, it was a mildly surprising series win right here. I think a lot of us had the Phillies taking most of this. Simply felt like they had the talent advantage on here. And of course, having the home field advantage, just having such a deep lineup, it was hard to believe that you could shut them down for even 2 out of 3 games. And that's kind of what they did, like 1.5 out of the 3 games. Aside from the middle game, that first one, the way that the bullpen performed, especially in game 1, and then again in game 3, that was kind of the difference in the series. And you could really narrow it down a lot to Tanner Scott. This was as good as Tanner Scott has been and as important as he has been, especially in that final game, coming on the mound with a 1-run lead with 2 runners in scoring position and holding it right there, then going through the heart of the lineup in the bottom of the 9th. And this was a big statement for the fact that you have that guy at the end of your pen and you have several guys leading up to him that you trust quite a bit as well. David Robertson had 2 separate scoreless innings, even though that one on yesterday was really dicey, loading the bases himself and barely squeezing out of it. And aside from that, this kept a little glimmer of hope alive that, it's not just about focusing on that 3rd wildcard spot, that maybe there's a path to catching this Phillies team. By winning this series, you clinch the season series in the tiebreaker against the Phillies in case you finish with the same record as they do. A really exhilarating weekend for this team to kind of narrow the gap, it seemed. Even though going into it, you kind of thought the Phillies were the team that were the stronger group, but this certainly made it seem a lot more even between the two.
Yeah, and with the Marlins, we can go ahead and look at that first game. Marlins taking 3-2 against the Fish, and starting for them with Yuri Perez. Santiago from Los Marlins. Talk to us a little bit what you saw from Yuri going up against that power-hitting Phillies lineup. 2 earned runs, 3 walks might be a lot for Yuri, and 4 strikeouts. What did you see from the Phenom against the power-hitting Phils?
I didn't see him throw the ball bad. The solo homer keeps bugging him a little bit. It's been bugging him for a while since he returned from Double-A. But yeah, that game was crazy. He kept them in the game. I mean, that's all you can ask for from a starting pitcher, especially this late into the season. I know they keep monitoring his innings. Stallings, how about that, man? What a big blast. Who would have saw that coming to win the game? Sanchez off the bench. I know a lot of people give LMF a lot of heat on Twitter. He's not clutch, but he seems pretty clutch to me. And, it set the tone. David Robertson actually picked up 2 wins in the series. I mean, not really how you draw it up, I guess, going in, but it worked. I never would have thought they would have. I didn't see the bullpen game on Sunday coming, especially them being this close in the race. And Luzardo's on regular rest, and I know they want to monitor his innings as well as Garrett's. But it comes to a fine line between monitoring these guys' innings, and I mean, you're right there. You really got to go for it. But look at it; everything worked out at the end. Like I said, Robertson picked up a couple big wins, and Tanner Scott, I mean, solidifying himself not only as the best reliever in the Marlins bullpen, but one of the best relievers in baseball, period. So, yeah, it's a great series win, and it sets up, this stretch here where they're going up against Milwaukee and the Braves, and it's going to be fun, man. This is really fun baseball.
Yeah. Kevin, we're going to go to you next, talk about that second game. I know it was a loss, maybe not a lot of highlights or positive notes for the Marlins. Just what did you see? We'll give you the Cueto talk if you want that, maybe a little Emmanuel De Jesus, but just what did you see from that second game quickly, since it did not go well for the Fish seemingly at all?
I think you said it the right way. It didn't go very well for the Fish. Obviously, Cueto started. He gave up, I believe, 5 earned. Then De Jesus comes in. I think Miami then comes back. They're down 5-4. De Jesus gives up the final 3 to make it the final score of 8-4. Garrett Hampson had a home run in that game. Very surprising. Aside from that, I mean, it was a game that they were in for a little bit, and unfortunately, I guess they're trying to rely too much on De Jesus, and he gave up those final 3 runs there. But tough game. Castellanos with the home run there. No, I'm sorry. Schwarber with the home run. Castellanos had 2 RBIs. So good game for them too. And then finally, we spoke about game 3.
That was the interesting one because, people compared it to when Ryan Weathers was left out to dry in Texas in a winnable ball game. It said, imagine if they, didn't go with that method in game 2 and they had gone back to Puck and Scott, who pitched game 1. How bad of a situation they would be in heading into game 3, as well as this series in Milwaukee. So sometimes you just have to eat it. And, you can't use your best guys every single game. So unfortunately, if Emmanuel had simply maybe not surrendered 3 runs in I think it was his second inning of work, you have a good chance at sweeping that series. But, I think Skip knows what he's doing. And, yeah, he saved his big guys for game 3, and they needed him.
And let's be honest. I mean, they were down 5-0. So
they were down 5-0. Right. He came in down already 5-0. So, but I guess then the question was, okay, do you take him out when it's 5-3? I think they made the right call because they would have been screwed on Sunday and heading into Milwaukee with no off days. So,
right.
That everything worked out.
What made the Weathers one so objectionable is because he had the lead when Weathers came in the game. Or I think it may have been tied and then they took the lead. Either way, he was on the mound with a lead, whereas they were always trailing. Even though they narrowed that gap, it was still trailing. And so you're still pretty unlikely to win no matter what relievers you use. So that was one that I did agree with Skip on that. It set them up pretty well. It surprised me that they called up Daniel Castano fresh off throwing 108 pitches fully stretched out. And he's one of the only guys in the pen that didn't get into the game. So he's still around and waiting. But I was, so as much as it was a little deflating that he didn't try to chase that win in game 2, he really did in game 3. Even like foregoing the freshest arm that he had available. He's like, no. We're trying to win, Stallion. Unfortunately, we're trying to win. You're not you're not in our winning game plan. We'll go to you if we absolutely need to. But that was impressive. Yeah. So Skip has gotten a lot of heat too during the second half of the season for some of his managerial decisions as well. And I thought he did pretty well in this series, including with going back to game 1 again with Sanchez coming off the bench to pinch hit. There was some thought that you could have argued maybe he should have started the game, but the fact that they used him in a spot before the game was out of reach, he pressed a lot of right buttons during these 3 games.
Yeah, and you got to assume that Robertson is unavailable today, at least Soriano probably as well. And I think if it is a safe situation, they will go with Tanner. But all these guys threw a significant amount of pitches yesterday. Snarty threw 23, Scott threw 25, Robertson threw 31. Hoeing is obviously unavailable for really the first couple games of this series. So they're going to really need length from Jesus Luzardo.
Yeah, it's going to be a big series coming up against the Brewers. But before we head into that and some Sixto talk, Giancarlo not standing. I want to hear your thoughts on that series versus the Phillies. Maybe what you saw, maybe highlights, positives for the Fish. Again, going up against the lineup, Schwarber hitting home runs, Trey Turner looking like an MVP type player, signing that contract, and just obviously also with Nick Castellanos, who could hit a home run at any moment. Just what do you see overall from the Fish, maybe relief starters in that series?
You're muted, Papito.
He's not muted.
No, he's not muted.
He's not muted.
His name might be Giancarlo, but he looks like Sandy.
Wait, see if your mic. You can go into settings and see if anything there. But while Giancarlo does that, Kevin, again, really quickly, just how did you see the offense overall while we wait for Giancarlo to fix his mic? How did you see the offense in that series? Because they already gets a power hitting team. They already gets a big team that likes to score runs and can compete with them at any level.
It was a good offensive performance overall by this team. Obviously, unexpected players stepped up. Obviously, in game one, you had Jacob Stallings. I believe Wendell may have had the RBI there as well in that game. Maybe I'm probably wrong, but you had no. Okay, so those Stallings and Jesus Sanchez, I think, were the two there.
Game one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, game one. Obviously, Stallings, you never expect that. So, and then aside from that, it was just a good offensive performance by this team. I think they got to Ranger Suarez at the end of the day. They were able to kind of tack on some runs on Aaron Nola in that middle game. I'm not sure who the starter in game one was, but overall good offense. Obviously, they took 2 out of 3, so you should be pleased with how the result ended for this series.
Yeah, I think they won 2 out of 3 despite a mediocre offensive performance. They scored the 3 runs in game one just via a late pinch hitting option in Jesus Sanchez, and then Stallings ran into one and hit a piss missile to left. And then in game 2, they finally, you're right, they did get to Aaron Nola, but once they did not score the rest of the way. And then, the offense did show up a little bit late in the game again after being no hit for 6 innings against Suarez in game 3. So, I think it's surprising that they won 2 out of 3 despite it not being a crazy offensive performance, especially in that ballpark for Miami. If anything, it's looks good that they won 2 out of 3 without their best stuff.
Off the Philly
first game. There we go. Perfect.
I don't know how Strom still continues to pitch such high leverage innings. I've seen that guy pitch all year long, and it seems like he always gives up hard contact. I don't know how they continue to put him in late in games. And Dominguez is fastball down the middle. Sir Anthony, that is. They have some issues in that bullpen.
Can you guys hear me now or no?
Oh, perfect. Perfect.
I was gonna say. I mean, I think Robertson getting kind of his stuff back, or to the point where we can kind of trust him a little bit more. That's good for the morale of the team. We're speaking a little bit about Jazz kind of taking the load off of Solera being out, but I think De La Cruz has kind of taken that role in stride. And then like earlier we were speaking about Luzardo. We need him to come up big these next games. Even though Sandy hasn't been the Sandy of last year, still kind of the second half of the season he's been our ace. But overall this whole season, I mean, we're the team that doesn't give up. We're scrappy, even down 5 runs late in the game, 6 runs, you feel like you always have a shot. And that's kind of a team that's, built for the playoffs per se, that's the kind of team that'll, sneakily, make it, deep into the postseason. I'm sure all these teams look at the Marlins right now and are saying, "Damn, we don't want to face them, especially this time of the year." And like you guys know, it's all about who gets hot at the right time, and it looks like that's definitely what's going on right now with the Marlins. It's good to see.
Yeah, a lot of positives to see from this series. But to go from that, we can talk about maybe another positive. Right behind me, Mr. Sixto Sanchez. He is back, kind of getting ready to pitch 1 inning. 20 pitches, it looks like the limit tomorrow, I believe, for AA Pensacola going into their playoff run. Kevin, we'll start with you with this since you are the AA minor league aficionado here, especially with Alex Carver, MIA. How do you see Sixto Sanchez performing in this? How do the Wahoos, how do they performing now going to the playoffs? Now with Sixto Sanchez, that messed things up. Give us a little rundown there.
I don't know how he's going to do. I haven't seen this guy pitching in a professional inning since October 8th, which was the playoff game.
Of which year?
Gave up 4 earned. So we'll see. Obviously, I think the last report was that he was hitting 94, which is very impressive. We'll see how he does. Obviously, 1 inning not very telling, but we're gonna see how he looks. Obviously, we'll see if he's starting the game or he's gonna piggyback whoever the starting pitcher is, or if they go with an opener. Obviously, I don't think it'll affect any playoff thing. They've clinched for a very, very long time. They were the first half champs. If you're the first half champ, you're automatically into the playoffs, which was the case last season for Pensacola. We'll see. I'm very intrigued. I think tomorrow the Pensacola Blue Wahoos broadcast will have the highest viewership they've had all season long. So that's to watch this guy throw 20 pitches in one inning. So I'm very excited to see. We're gonna find out if Sixto is real or not. So he's not a ghost. He's real. So he's gonna throw tomorrow. One inning, 20 pitches. We're gonna see how it goes. I'm actually I do want to know what his physique is right now, and not in a weird way. Just like this guy has had a lot of issues.
295 pounds.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how he comes in, but for the most part, the videos he's put on his Instagram, he looks pretty skinny for the most part.
Eli, can we get that graphic if you have it about the lineup that the last time Sixto pitched?
Right.
Because there are some names.
I did forget. He pitched in the spring training game, right? Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
This is the last official professional appearance that Sixto made. It was starting one of the final spring games of 2021. Or actually, this was it was towards the end of spring in 2021. Yeah, and it was a big deal where he pitched well in this game. He touched 101. He went, he wasn't fully stretched out. And the reason it was a big deal when they optioned him to the minors after this game, because he wasn't stretched out. He wasn't stretched out because he fell behind in spring training because he tested positive for COVID. No, he had visa issues. He had visa issues getting back into the U.S. for spring training.
Is that him or Cabrera?
Wasn't that Brazoban?
No, that was
Cabrera
was last year. Cabrera had the visa issue.
I don't think so. I think in 2021, I think it was Sixto that had his own visa issues that year.
I'm not sure. Maybe. Anyway.
Either way, he was slow getting in, and even though he looked relatively healthy, he wasn't fully stretched out. They sent him to the minors, and the week after he pitched in this game, that's when he felt the injury for the first time pitching at the alternate training site in Jacksonville. That's when they sent guys to Jacksonville. Yeah, and so
there's that from a research tool.
Right. I've seen that. Yeah, I've put it together for people. In fact, I have it saved somewhere or other.
What a lineup.
Anyway, so obviously different. It's been an eternity in the baseball world since this last appearance that we had there. And he hasn't even made it to a minor league rehab appearance until now. It has taken this long because it has taken multiple surgeries. He had one in the middle of 2021 after a few months of trying to get through it without a procedure. And then he had to get a second smaller surgery after the 2022 season, kind of a cleanup of his shoulder, both of these impacting his shoulder. And there was some excitement entering this spring because he had committed to a new level of physical fitness, we thought. And there was talk about him, like he was seemingly given he was kind of believed to be on track to do something this spring and never actually got into a game. And it's been just a lot of starts and stops for him in Jupiter ever since then, where he's done throwing, he's done a few bullpen sessions, and then he has a setback. And then he has more bullpen sessions and then a setback. And then finally he reached the point where he was throwing live batting practice. So he's facing hitters, but now here we are coming up on September 12th, 900 something days after this spring appearance. He's going to be appearing in a game just for one inning. This is a guy that was highly regarded because you had a lot of the ingredients you look for in a starter. He had a really deep pitch mix. He was efficient with his pitches. He had great commands of his stuff. But now the expectation's completely different. He's only being used after all this time. He's only stretched out for like one inning at a time, 1 inning or 20 pitches. I think realistically, that's kind of what you're looking for in the future. This is a reliever. And now the question is whether he's a minor league reliever or whether he's an actual useful major league reliever. It's a brand new role for him. He has, from what we know, his stuff is still pretty diminished right now from what it used to be. There's a question about if ever he gets back to the stuff that he used to have. There's so many questions. And at least we'll have maybe one or two of them closer to being answered based on what he shows during this game on Tuesday.
Yeah, it really shows how far he's fallen. You know, you just mentioned that he hit 101, and then Kevin, he had high velocity of 94. So that really tells you how far his arm has gone since the last time you've seen him play competitive baseball.
Dude,
I want to hear.
weird. This is a very weird box score in his last game. Like,
Go ahead.
Victor was in this game, and Joe Dunham there too. So
And
those are
everyone's
some-
saying, like that the team is completely different from this graphic. And aside from maybe two positions, they have upgraded every single position there from what they have there. All three outfield spots are better than they are in that lineup, and you could go as far as saying first base and third base are better off. Even though I hate to say that about Brian Anderson, but Berger and Bell are better than BA and Aguilar. So the Marlins, I think 7 of the 9 spots there are upgraded since that graphic. So that's
Really?
good.
You go with Adam Duvall? You've had a pretty nice year.
Yeah, I mean, you said De La Cruz and Sanchi are better than Adam Duvall was. So
Yeah.
you take that. Marlins are a much better team than they were in that graphic. So you'll love to see it. You have Luis Ariz at second, Jazz in center instead of Lewis Brinson. There you go.
Before we get into the break, what do you hear Santiago?
That game in that you guys are mentioning, I was at that game. I brought Yessie with me. I know you guys had her last month on the show. Yeah, we were both at that game, and I remember seeing him as well in West Palm Beach, either the start or two before that one. And like Eli said, he was touching 100 miles an hour. And he went down to that alternate side, and he was never seen again. But Eli touched a pretty good point. He wrote something the other day that this performance, and he mentioned, about keeping his 40-man roster spot, during the offseason and during the winter. These next few games that he's going to have with Double-A Pensacola, it'll be interesting to see how he does. I think we're all very intrigued. But if he were to throw the ball well, I think he stays in Pensacola, and he'd be the only guy in the Pensacola bullpen with Major League Baseball playoff experience, pitching for them in the playoffs.
Right.
It'd be crazy. It'd be nuts. And like Eli said, if he does well, do you guys keep him on the 40-man roster, or is that too far gone by now, come the winter? What would you guys do if he were to perform over this next few weeks with Pensacola?
They've kept him on the roster for the past 3 years. You might as well just keep him out there now, especially if he performs and he provides some value. Obviously, we don't know what this team will look like in 2024, so he may be someone that they may – can't believe I'm saying this, but they'll maybe have to use him in 2024, or he's probably going to be not starter, but he'll be in the initial 26-man roster as a reliever, and it'll be a nice option to have.
Yeah, to be clear, Sixto was supposed to be out of options entering this year, and they had to petition Major League Baseball to get him an exception to that over the winter. So that's why he's in the minors. He's not even on like a rehab assignment right now. He's just a minor leaguer now. But surely they're not going to be able to get another option beyond this year. So they're in that situation, as Kevin presented, where entering next year, he'll either have to actually make the team, or they have really no other recourse. They can hide him on the injured list or something. He does still have something to prove during this stretch. It is, even it's a small sample, he's got to show something. Otherwise, it's really hard to justify keeping him on a spot during the winter for a team that's trying to win games. You can't hold on to the image of who he used to be, however many years ago. I mean, people are ready to move on for that. If you actually have a competitive team right now, he still has such a strong pull on people's hearts because of the prospect hype that he had and the way he performed right away with the team and all that around him. But he's not bigger than the team. He's not bigger than all the other young talented pitchers that they have in this organization right now. So there is a decision to be made on him. He will have to actually show something over these final few weeks of the minor league season in order for them to justify keeping him around. Otherwise, they got to make a choice. They've been as patient as they possibly could, but not everybody comes back from these injuries, period. Some guys simply don't recover all the way. And this is a test to see what percentage of the way back he is and whether or not that is even really worth holding on to.
Yeah. I guess for us people that want to see his velo and all of that stuff, you would have wished he was in AAA where you get StatCast, where you got all that stuff. Because with this, the only thing you're going to get is video. You're not going to get, obviously, the people in Pensacola, they have their own metrics. But for us, I guess fans, media here, we don't get to see any of that until.
Kevin, are we not sending you to Pensacola on Tuesday to cover that?
I wish.
Why aren't you already on your way there, man? What do we pay you for?
I don't know. I wish I was there. Beautiful stadium.
I mean, this is someone that we're talking about who pitched a total of 39 innings in the major leagues, and if you want to include the postseason, probably still less than 50 innings. How fast he's made us, want him, and just the way that he's kind of like changed this organization to a point where we're 3 years past that, and we're still clamoring. Where's Sixto? Where's he going to be? Where's he at for a guy who pitched less than 50 innings in a COVID year with no crowd, with no real sense of being maybe a major league starter? And yeah, it's crazy. It's a long way. But before we get into the break, I want to hear Giancarlo's thoughts on the whole Sixto situation there, and maybe what he expects. And is there any prospect for Sixto to be a major leaguer at any point in his future, Giancarlo? I think it's happening again with your mic.
Let's just go to the break for now.
That's so weird.
Well, something that I could remind Marlins fans is, I can't believe it was 3 years ago, but he was towards the end of that 2020 season, he was starting to slow down a little bit when it came to performance. He had a really bad start in Atlanta in September of 2020. And yeah, he had that really swell wild card start against a very bad Cubs team, in my opinion, that just could not hit velocity. So he pretty much relied on that all game long. And then he got absolutely pummeled by the Atlanta Braves.
Yeah, that was a bad
He gave up 5 to the Nationals.
He could not throw strikes. He walked the tightrope the entire start when in the one inning that he didn't give up runs, and I think he only lasted 3 where they had to go to Trevor Rogers after. So he was already sort of, like cooling down a little bit in his major league career before the end of the 2020 season. And then we haven't seen him pitch since, like you guys have been saying. So I'm very intrigued to see what we see.
Can you hear me now, or?
Yeah. Perfect. We'll go to Giancarlo, go to the break, and then we'll hear from Noah at the press box in Milwaukee. So stay tuned for that. But first, let's hear from Giancarlo.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of the reason why it's so tough to let go and turn the page on Sixto has to do with who we gave up for him also. I mean, anytime you trade a player of that caliber, you never want to wave the white flag and say, hey, we lost a trade. So that's why it's kind of hard for people to, get Sixto off their minds. I know I'm every once in a while, like every few months, I'll check in and say, hey, what's up with Sixto, Wish it could have worked out, but I think I'm with Eli on this. After a certain, amount of time, it's tough to expect him to bounce back and be the Sixto we expected him to be. But maybe he can carve out a nice relief role for himself, I always looked at Sixto when he had that initial injury as a possible closer for his team, especially when we lacked a closer at that time. So maybe it's not over. Let's see.
Yeah, another thing that's not over is flipped fish. Last series was a bit of a wash. We didn't have flip fish, but for this one we do. Isaac, this is your segment. Take it away.
Yes, sir. Well, yeah, last series, obviously they played the Phillies again, and they had just come off a series against the same Phillies. So it's a little bit redundant to do it again with the Washington Nationals. We had the opportunity to go expose the Nationals, but today they play the Brewers for the first time all year, for the first time since September of last year, where they spoiled the Brewers' playoff hopes. And here we have a player. You can see third baseman and first baseman, spent a brief amount of time with the Marlins, came up with the Brewers a little bit. Very fun player. No, it's not Brian Anderson, and we'll get into it, I guess, after the break, right?
Yeah, get into it after the break. Everyone put your predictions for this in the bottom. Again, former Marlin, former Brewer, 0.7 WAR, so maybe not the most productive in that aspect, but at least the batting average. Just overall, almost an average player, maybe a bit below average, just looking at these stats.
Currently 40 years old.
40 years old, first base, third baseman type player. Big fan favorite, maybe, for the Marlins. But
yes.
While everyone thinks about that, we're going to go ahead and hint to the break. And after that break, we're going to give you the answer, preview this series, and hear from our own Burger, Noah Burger. So stay tuned.
I already got it.
Mr. Trace.
And we are back with FOF Live presented by La Pop. Again, check them out on Instagram, Twitter, and their Doral location. And the winner looks like someone who wants to better himself with the Marlins community, it may seem like. Mr. Loud Marlins fan. I'm
Jesus Sanchez hater. Woo!
This is Loud Marlins fans gets a nice win here with Casey McGree. Great pull from LMF. Maybe from that we'll give him a little shout out on FOF, maybe, depending on how it goes from here to the end of to the start of the game. But again, Casey McGee. Isaac, can you tell us why you chose him?
Just a little bit of an obscure name. He's someone that had to go play a year in Japan. I think it was during the 2013 season. Miami must have liked what they saw. They signed him, and he won Comeback Player of the Year. Do I have that all correct? I think that's all correct.
That's a good. Did he really win that award? Like, he wasn't that good when he came.
I think he won Comeback Player of the Year, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it was a really fun year. Casey Tits McGee. I think he came back in 2015. He probably should have just stopped at the Marlins after that 2014 season. And the best thing about Chase getting it correctly, he spelled it correctly. It's very tough. It's not McGee like Jake McGee, the pitcher. It's Casey McGee. So kudos to you, Chase. I now unmute you on Twitter for getting that correct.
Yeah, he won. 287 batting average. Yeah, NL Comeback Player of the Year.
You did win it.
So if you're watching Casey McGee, you're a Marlins legend. We love you.
Yeah, very important player. He's the one who came after that 2013 100-loss season. He played a pivotal third base for this team that was losing Placido Polanco the year before. So he had a good run with Miami, and so that's why I chose him. I didn't go with Brian Anderson. That would have been too obvious. And there are other few names that I could have gone with, but Casey McGee felt right.
Well, we have our very own Marlins Brewers flip fish person, and that is Mr. Noah Berger at Milwaukee.
I didn't get that introduction at all. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, pretty good.
Yes, actually pretty nice. It's all right.
Talk
to us. What you hearing?
I've been up since 5 a.m. Very tired. We have seen Brian Anderson. He is alive and breathing.
Breathing.
He did take BP, hitting some nukes, but he hasn't played in 19 days. And they just called up Josh Donaldson.
Right.
Ooh.
So you're not going to be seeing Brian Anderson anytime soon.
Is Donaldson in the lineup?
Donaldson in fifth or sixth or he's in the lineup.
Inside, I will. The Marlins side, I will say that the most reaction we've ever had for a injury update was when Sixto's name was mentioned in actual game action. It's a very big news. But other than that, the rest is really kind of depressing. Sandy's still a no-throw. Soler started hitting progression. But pretty much everything else is business as usual. Yeah. I think this is every series is critical down the stretch. You've got 7 against the Brewers coming up. This is getting it, and you just so happen to be missing Corbin Burns.
Yeah, right after
counting your blessings. Yuri did throw a bullpen today. I think he might start Thursday, but nothing's officially been announced. And they won't say yes or no. And when it comes, so it's probably going to be Luzardo today. I'm guessing Eddie's going to be a bulk guy tomorrow with an opener, and then Braxton and then Yuri.
Yeah, as we're looking at the injury update with 4.5 million views, going viral.
Yeah. Is that true? Is that real?
You want to see six?
No. I've been known to perhaps stretch to the truth.
Eli, I absolutely.
That is what it feels like. That is what it feels like.
Eli, you're the worst.
With 6 still throws and immaculate inning, they're gonna go back to your.
I had my hopes so high.
Get it? Because his number is 45, so I put the 4 or
Go
5
home.
in there.
Eli, go home.
Noah, talk to us. You're at the ballpark. Is this your first time heading to the Milwaukee Brewers ballpark? Tell a little bit about this.
Yes, it is. It's the clubhouse here is the visiting clubhouse is I'm hearing myself.
Yeah, we're hearing the echo too.
Very off-putting.
I hear you.
The visiting clubhouse here is much larger than any other visiting clubhouse I've been to. The press box here, the seats are all very low, so you kind of have a hard angle. But no, it's really really interesting ballpark. I didn't realize there are actually blinds to close the windows out beyond the scoreboard. I thought it was just open air, and with the roof closed, it becomes a closed-in, fully enclosed ballpark. I thought it was somewhat open air.
How close are you to the field? Like Tampa? Is it like Tampa or?
No, but there's two spots along the drywall wall back here. You can see one of them back there.
I see it.
That was actually a couple of days ago.
Oh yeah.
And they marked it out who it was. It was William Contreras versus Caleb.
Oh, that's
Fields
cool.
On August 23rd, 2023.
Will you be going down the slide?
No, I will not be going down the slide.
Um,
I want to. I will not be going down.
Well, tell us really quickly. I know playing the Brewers, they're first in their division. They have guys like Mark Canha, who came from the trade deadline, Carlos Santana. They had their top prospects, Sal Frelick. What are you seeing from the Brewers? How do you think the Marlins can handle a division-leading team like the Brewers? Because, again, this is a lineup, it seems like top to bottom. And, again, they're not going to see Corbin Burns, which is a positive for the Fish.
So you got to put the ball in play against this team, just offensively. Something Kyle pointed out to me, and he said that I could publicize this before him. I have his permission. The Brewers are second to last in terms of turning double plays defensively. Now, as a Marlins team that hits double plays like there's no tomorrow,
Leads the league.
might be kind of helpful. But again, you put the ball into a double play, you're gonna get double play. But in terms of the Brewers' offense, they had a really crushing loss yesterday after their pitcher just went out there and shoved. And then Sal Frelick just put his body on the line to make a catch, and I think it was the 10th inning. They're going to be looking for blood. But both teams here are in the playoff, so it's going to be interesting. One thing I want to point out before I leave, because they're about to start the end. Much like at the time Marlins Park, during the times of Heath Bell, the bullpens here are opposite. The home team is in the first base dugout, and the bullpen for the home team is all the way in left field. And it's opposite for the other ones.
Noah, did you send in your prediction video?
I did not send in a video. I sent in my predictions.
Okay, perfect.
I am much prepared to do some sort of recorded video right now.
Have fun. Enjoy the game. Everyone follow at TrainBoy100 on Twitter for all the updates and potentially a Brian Anderson 9th inning grand slam. But
not
go enjoy it, Noah. Go have fun. And go enjoy the ballpark also, all right? We'll talk to you after. All right. So that's Noah Berger with the press box report and American Family Field up in Milwaukee. But with that, might as well get into this series versus the Brewers. It is a 4-game set. So it's going to be a long series for the Marlins, going up against some interesting pitchers. Luckily, like mentioned, they won't have to face Corbin Burns, who just came off basically a no-hitter, 8 innings, no hits in that performance against the Yankees. So we'll have to face Brendan Woodruff, Freddie Peralta, and then another person that Isaac probably could have picked for flip fish, Colin Rea. Santiago, well, what do you see in the series for the Marlins and the Brewers? 4 games, division leading team, a team that's made a lot of moves since the trade deadline, and still looks like they're still trying to acquire players and are getting maybe a little hot at the moment.
Well, you brought up Colin Ray, man. That name certainly should bring up emotions for Marlins fans. He made one infamous start for the Marlins. He was part of the Andrew Kashner trade when they were going for it in 2016. And I think they ended up trading Naylor to San Diego because Ray was from San Diego. And then they found out something about his medicals. He had something wrong with his elbow. If you ask former Prez David Sampson, he can't stand Preller and the guys in San Diego to this day because he says they hide medicals. Yeah, so that'd be kind of a good game for the Marlins to win. I think they can compete, man. They just showed they can compete with the best of them. I mean, you see what they did in Philadelphia. Before that, I mean, they took 2 out of 3 from the Dodgers. This is another team, and I don't even think Milwaukee's as good as those 2 clubs that the Marlins have just played. I know Christian Yelich is having more of a Christian Yelich type season this year. He was really off since he broke his knee in Miami. Shattered his kneecap there on a foul ball. I remember that. He was coming off an MVP season. I think he was on his way to win another MVP season. He's not at that level yet, but he looks like more like Yelly these days. And but I think the Marlins can compete. That place is a bandbox. That place in Milwaukee, I know it used to be called Miller Park. It's Great American Field or something like that nowadays. I mean, you look for guys like Bell. You look for guys like Berger. Mr. September, Brian De La Cruz. Those are all guys that can go off in this series. Jesus Sanchez. I think the Marlins are going to compete in this series, and I know it's not prediction time yet, but I think it's going to be a very interesting series, and just got to stay away from that back end of Milwaukee's bullpen because they get a lead late in that game. They're tough. Right. But, yeah, and I think, pitching-wise, I think they're going to be okay. They got Luzardo. Cabrera probably going to go to Mormon, right, guys? He can probably be the bulk guy. So, yeah, I think it's going to be pretty interesting.
Yeah, these teams have a lot in common in terms of how they lean on their bullpen a lot and how, for the most part, that has worked well for the Brewers. The Brewers are right there neck and neck with the Marlins in terms of their one-run record in those games that come down to the wire. And they have their own Tanner Scott back there and Devin Williams. They are on that same tier. He is that same type of elite of the elite guy where you bring him in, you feel really good about it. We had a question in the chat about how the Brewers bullpen is doing after a 13-inning game. And we actually had this visual that comes in from our research tool to take a look at that for people that are curious about it. Yeah. So with them, it's let's see. They used 5 different relievers yesterday, but none of them too excessively. It's probably Abner Uribe. He's a guy that you would expect to be down. He's a rookie that's had a really great year, and he's probably unavailable for tonight because he also pitched a lot right before Sunday's game. But I think just about everybody else will be available if needed today for them, despite all the innings that they just played yesterday. Really great bullpen that they have. An offense that is centered around Yelich. Like Yelich, as much as they have brought on some exciting young guys in that lineup as well, Yelich is the engine that makes it go. And this is now the 3rd straight game that he's not in the lineup as he deals with some back issues. So I think he's still day-to-day, where it's a chance that he does appear during the series at some point, unless there's some setback. But it's a pretty big win that he's not in there tonight. Instead, you have Josh Donaldson in there. And Josh Donaldson was obviously he seems like a guy that was cooked earlier this year with the Yankees for people that were following along with that saga over there before his injury. So this lineup is not really that imposing. And you put it side by side next to the Marlins lineup, as we're going to do in just a moment here. There are people that you can pitch to in this lineup. There are inexperienced young guys that you shouldn't be afraid of in this situation here. So as much as this team had been better than the Marlins this year, how much of that is just playing in the NL Central, where the NL Central is one of the softest divisions in baseball this season and beating up on those teams? I'm not convinced that there's really all that much difference between these two in terms of overall talent and depth. I think they have a lot in common, actually.
Yeah,
and then when you think about last season when Miami went into Milwaukee, I mean that's got to be behind almost every player's. That's got to be in their head. Like this team basically eliminated us. Not basically, they did eliminate us from playoff contention last season. I mean, they got to Devin Williams with the Dylan Cruz RBI. Avi Garcia hit a grand slam in this series last season. I mean, it was a 4-game set. It was, I believe, the one loss they had was the Sandy complete game complete game, in quotations, because he pitched 8, but still counts. So, and they only gave up 1 total run and they got shut out. So, it's a big series. And obviously, if you look at Milwaukee's lineup, there's a lot of guys in there that they have their good, they have their bad. I want to start with Mark Canha, though. I mean, after getting traded from the Mets, where he was pretty good, just over league average. He's now hitting over 300 with the Brewers, getting on base at almost 400, and he is not slugging it like crazy, but still 127 OPS plus for Mark Canha as a Brewer. Carlos Santana's been the real struggle there. He actually got worse since going to Milwaukee. He went from a 97 WRC plus, not WRC plus, OPS plus to like an 85 OPS plus. Aside from that, Willie Dom is having a little bit of a, I guess, how can you call it? A little slump this year for the most part. I haven't looked at the stats lately for him, but there you still have Saul Frelick, Joey Waymer, their top guys, top prospects that they called up this season. William Contreras is there, and Josh Donaldson's debut. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, and for Joseph there, he has 10 hits with 15 home. I believe, what is it? 20 hits with 15 home runs. A little crazy there, with Josh Donaldson. But you mentioned William Contreras, Kev. I want to bring him up because if I would have told you at the beginning of the year that the only one player on this team with an over 800 OPS, you would not have believed it was William Contreras. But it is. He is the only player on that Milwaukee Brewers offense who has over an 800 OPS. So I don't know if that should tell you how maybe the other players have fallen off, or maybe they've had some peaks and valleys. And it seems like Contreras has only gotten better as the season has progressed to now where maybe he's one of the best offensive catchers in the National League. In the beginning of the year, I know he was slumping a bit, but now it seems like he's hitting a home run almost every at bat. He's getting doubles. He's hitting the ball more. Kev, you really liked this guy when he was in Atlanta. What is it about his game that really excites you and maybe making him one of the better offensive bats in the catching position?
Power, man. He's a pretty powerful guy. Obviously, he's Wilson Contreras' brother. He learned from Travis d'Arnaud back in Atlanta. I mean, this is a guy who's pretty good for the most part. I would have loved him in Miami. I said he should have been a trade target for a while. Obviously, he goes to the Brewers. I believe it was in the Sean Murphy trade when it was like a 3-team swap. He was involved in that. If you look at his month of September thus far, he's been pretty good. I mean, he's hitting for average almost 300, but struggling a little bit on the OPS section. But he's still getting on base. 1 homer thus far in September. He's a great player. I really like William Contreras. And in his last 11 plate appearances, 273, he struggled a little bit. So we'll see how he does this time around. He's, as you said, he's arguably, I guess, their best player without Christian Yelich on the field right now. So we'll see how that goes. He's going to hit for power, especially in somewhere like Milwaukee where he has 15 homers this season. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah. I love this prediction that BA, who has not played in 3 weeks, is finally going to get in some action when they need a position player pitching. That's a decent guess. I mean, he's got the arm for it to be like a passable pitcher. He's got that arm strength. That is what we talked about already on the Spaces yesterday. A really bizarre story that BA is on their roster. He's been available to play. He was an everyday player for them earlier this year, and all of a sudden he's just hiding in plain sight. Really weird storyline for him that makes it pretty clear that the Brewers have soured on him. They haven't cut him yet, but they've done, you could say, something that might be worse than cutting somebody, to have them just sit there and not play and never get into any game for a team that is playing really important games at this stage of the season.
I want to quickly touch up on Brandon Woodruff, their starter. He hasn't pitched too much this season. If you go on anywhere, you only see he has 55 strikeouts. But, I mean, his last game was pretty freaking good. It was against Pittsburgh, 6 strikeouts, 2 walks, only 2 hits, 7 innings pitched. So this guy's back better than ever. He's good to go, and he's been having a pretty good season for the most part. Obviously, smaller sample size, but Miami has a I don't know what the rest of the pitching lineups look like or pitching matchups look like for Miami, but right now this is probably the hardest pitcher they'll face this series, unless I'm missing out on another guy.
For you, Kev, let me see that here. I believe it's going to be Edward. Yeah, there it is. Edward Cabrera, Brax, and then that final game, I believe, is Yuri.
And then Freddie Peralta's been he's had his up and downs. So
the first 3 games, and then that final game, we think it's going to be Yuri. It's lined up to be his spot, but the team hasn't officially announced that yet.
Yeah.
Whereas in that 3rd game, we think that's going to be Colin Ray in there,
And
and
then Wade
and then,
Miley would be the fourth guy.
right,
Well-
he's the one that's on schedule for that one. So yeah,
Pretty good pitching matchups, honestly.
Yeah. I wanted to mention to you, Eli, we were talking about this before. How do you believe the Brewers are heading into it, coming off that game against the Yankees? What did you see in that game that maybe affected the Brewers? Because they, if you go by just having a 9-inning no-hitter, they had it between Burns and Devin Williams, but it kind of fell through later as the game progressed. How do you think that game went maybe for the Brewers, and maybe how does it affect this series? It's a long game. Maybe affect them mentally in a way, but when you're losing a game like that against the Yankees, just how did that go? How did you see that game? Because I know you're in that New York area.
I was more interested in the physical consequences, not the mental stuff, because in the 11th inning of the game, Sal Frelick and Joey Weimer collided right near the wall in right center, and Frelick made this amazing catch that saved the game, but his elbow went straight into Weimer's mouth, and blood was gushing out of there. I am shocked that Weimer is playing the very next day after having his face broken open by somebody's elbow. That speaks a lot about how tough he is to still be in there. They still have that pretty comfortable cushion over the other teams in the playoff race, and they were going to sweep this series. They're on the verge of doing that, so it's not like they are devastated. The series as a whole against the Yankees didn't really be a big step back for them. So, yeah, I'm not concerned. They shouldn't be concerned. Really, the biggest question was that collision, and then Yelich, the fact that Yelich missed the final 2 games of that series and he's not in the lineup tonight. That is clearly the biggest storyline to follow because of his history of back issues. If they can't figure out how to get him back to 100%, then that is an enormous loss for a team that otherwise, outside of him, has some inconsistency putting runs on the board.
I think it's worth mentioning, but this game, this has to be a must-win game, at least this one. And obviously, just looking outside the league, need to be a Braves fan, need to be a Mets fan. Braves thankfully took game. I believe today they're playing a doubleheader. They took the first game against Philly. That was a great game, just a back and forth. Atlanta able to pull it off 10-8. So they take down Philadelphia there in game 1. Then you have the Mets in Arizona. We'll see how that goes. The Mets haven't been very good this season. They have Zach Davies versus Jose Quintana. So that should be I wouldn't say the toilet bowl, but a pretty good mid-off. I think we could put it in that way. And then finally, just before going to predictions, we have the Brewers. Devin Williams kind of blew it for Milwaukee last season, if you remember. I think it was the Brian De La Cruz game, and he blew it in another instance as well. So worth just throwing that out there. 3.38 ERA. I think, when you look at a bigger sample size, it's probably the highest ERA when it comes to just the teams he's faced. Baltimore has like 7. It was like one game. So we'll see. I think this is definitely a guy that Miami's gotten to before. They could get to him again. I remember against Cincinnati, they got to Alexis Diaz. They've been able to get to closers kind of this season, I will say. And I guess that's worth a stat to look up in the future, just how did they do against teams closers for the most part. But I remember obviously Devin Williams last season. This season they've been able to. So worth throwing it out there that if you see him on the mound in a safe situation, never say never.
Yeah. Giancarlo, we haven't gotten to you, but talk to us what you see from the Marlins against the Brewers. What are you looking forward to maybe on both sides of the ball for the Fish?
You have an audio issue again.
He sounds so good when he has it set up the right way, for whatever reason. First time he tries to...
Oh, we still haven't even spoken about the Marlins lineup. Oh my God. All right.
Well, just to go through this Marlins lineup real quick while he gets it set up the right way. Arise at first base again, which he's now played for, I think, each of the last 4 times he's been in the lineup. With Bell going to DH like that, you would think it might be the other way around to get Arise a half day off at some point. That's good to see because he set out yesterday, and that ended his streak of playing every day for the past couple months. Other than that, allowed the usual suspects in there, from Berger to Jazz to DLC to Jesus. Xavier Edwards there at second. So it is refreshing to see Edwards getting in the lineup quite a bit so far for this team since he got called back up in there. With Fortes catching Luzardo, that's been the case throughout the entire season. It's this is kind of what we expect from this team. The question, as has been the case for a while, and especially recently, is how long it takes them to put runs on the board. there's been this pattern where it just takes them so long to do any damage against a starting pitcher, and they only figure it out late in the games. And sometimes, like yesterday, it's better late than never, and they put enough runs on late to like overcome that early deficit. But there are almost as many times where it's too little, too late. And against Brandon Woodruff, as Kevin outlined, this guy is, if he's not, he's a really strong number 2 behind Burns in this rotation. There's reason for concern that at least for this opening game that they could be in some trouble unless they really luck into a home run at some point. And that's a possibility when you play at this American Family Field. This could go either way for the series opener, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I think with that, Eli, let's get the prediction video.
This is prediction time.
It's time.
All right, it is prediction time, and for this series, don't forget that it is 4 games, so you can go split 3-1 either way, or a sweep on either side. And don't forget, for your MVP, could be a hitter, could be a batter, and your pick does not have to correlate with your MVP, so you can go Christian Yelich MVP, Marlins sweep, as we're looking at some of our super subscribers. A lot of DLC. I'm seeing a good amount of Brian Anderson also with Savento. Jake Berger. Williams going very strong there with the Milwaukee. He is not confident at all the Marlins would even get 1 game in that one. Brandon Woodruff, Willie Adames. Yeah, a lot of here. If we do we have the leaderboard? I don't even know. I'm not even sure who's in the lead anymore.
I believe you have been bumped down just a little bit on this board in a tie for, well, in third place by yourself behind super subscriber Williams and Grant right up there at the top.
Ryan's making a comeback after a nice couple predictions there. Romeo in 8th, Eli, Kevin, Noah, seemingly tied for 9th place there. But yeah, it's going to be a fun series. Don't forget, it's 4 games, so we're going to need 4. If you're ready, Eli, I'm ready to have our leadoff man.
Let's do one more sound check with Giancarlo to see whether or not we can hear him.
Let him go first.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Yeah,
good,
perfect.
good. Just in time to get you in here. So as he just laid out, you're going to pick how many games the Marlins win and who is your series MVP as we get the music bumping here.
All right.
Take it
All
away,
right.
Daniel.
I'm gonna
Leading
go
off.
with Marlins take 3 out of 4. I think that these games mean too much to the Marlins to let it slip. And I'm gonna go with Edward as my MVP. I think he solidifies himself back into the starting lineup, and he pitches a gem in this series.
Ooh, all right, Eddie, I like that. Next up, Mr. Kevin.
I'm gonna go Marlins take 3 out of 4. I was between DLC and Josh Bell for MVP. I'm gonna go Jake Berger as my MVP. This guy's gonna go nuclear. I have a good feeling about it. Good ballpark for him.
Ooh, okay, Santiago.
Kevin's stealing my picks, man, but I like it. You stay positive here. I think the Marlins take 3 out of 4, and it's hamburguesa time, man. I think Jake Berger, this ballpark is for the guy, and he's been hitting a lot of fly balls lately. So Marlins take 3 out of 4. Jake Berger's my MVP, and I like the music, guys. It's pretty intense.
I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go. Let's go with a split. I think they're gonna split. These teams are kind of evenly matched in a way. I think the Marlins take 2. Brewers are gonna take the last 2 there. But my MVP, I'm gonna go with the Brewer. I'm gonna go with William Contreras. I believe he's gonna have a really great offensive series and playing every game. 2 home runs, and now Mr. Eli.
As usual, with an even numbered series, I'm going with the series split right here. 2 wins each for the Marlins and Brewers. With my MVP, I'm sticking with Jesus Sanchez. He has been really incredible for the better part of a month now, regardless of who he's facing. I continue to have confidence in him to put up some big numbers here against Milwaukee to keep things very interesting for the Marlins.
All right. So a lot of predictions here. We'll have Noah's prediction on the screen after on Twitter. We'll have Isaac's, Grant's, everyone's getting ready for that. But yeah, get ready to watch this game. Remember, it's 4 games. It's going to be a very fun series. I'm going to have some fun pitching matchups there for sure. So make sure to stay tuned to watch that. LMF, Flip Fish winner, Maybe he redeemed himself. We'll see how it goes on Twitter when after this is posted. But as always, this is FOF Live presented by La Pop, Daniel, Eli, Kevin, Santiago, Giancarlo, and Noah at American Family Field. Always go fish.